All right, everybody. My name's Tet du Jour. We're starting streaming at 12:27. Nothing special about that time. It's Eastern Standard Time. So if you're going to come and hang out with me for the next hour or so, just realize that I have nothing special prepared for this. I usually come in here and I talk about who I am, where I come from, why I have a particular opinion, and that opinion is that your democracy is dead. No different than our old society says that the way to rule through royalty was dead. Yet, unfortunately, I think the more and more I take a look at these hierarchical systems, we're just building a bigger, better one called AI. We're starting to refer to it. We're starting to see it more and more in our daily lives, and I think it's a cause of, no alarm. No alarm needs to be raised for this. I think this is completely natural. But we're going to get into a little bit more of that scenario along with some other pop culture concepts. I mean, sure, the way that I usually roll this thing is very simple. I play a little bit of music because I play badly, like the jam track or the thing that I've chosen today is from Elevated Jam Tracks over on YouTube. I'm not looking for people's money. I'm not looking for their stuff. I'm not, looking for subscriptions. Actually, if anything, I'm looking for a good conversation. I'm looking to delve deep into the rabbit holes of our society by pointing out the idiosyncrasies and highlighting the synchronicities. So if you want to just chill back for a second and watch me play badly, I usually play piano and a little bit of guitar, and I play something, things that I find within the moments of coming on here. So it's like I don't really prepare these songs all that much because I enjoy the improvisation. It keeps me sharp, keeps my brain primed to talk about new topics and open to that type of intuitive style of playing. So anyway, I'm going to jump over here to the piano thing. You're going to see me real quick, and we're going to go ahead and get this started. Hopefully it won't jump to just a bullshit commercial here soon, but yeah, here we go. think that's going to be about enough of that. I like playing weird stuff, but at the same time, it's like I need to remind myself, if I sat down and I wanted to be this professional music player, I guess I could do that. But there's a part of me that really does feel like this multi-potentialite type of person that says I think I'd get bored with it too quickly. Just like that song, it's like I try to play different stuff every day just to say, hey, I want to jump in and just play for a while and then walk away. I couldn't imagine being in a profession where I had to play the same song for years. If, say, for example, I made a massively wonderful rock song or a massive ballad like that, or it doesn't matter what it was, if it was jazz or if it was this or it was country, I would get to a point where I'd be like, I can't play that song anymore. I'd be like, this is not fun. This is frustrating. And I think that's because where I come from, I grew up in a world of very ritualistic behaviors where it was like, you will do this, you will do this, where songs like that were never allowed to be played in the communities that I grew up in. The idea of playing a rock ballad for any type of Mormon function would have been, during a religious situation would have been completely sacrilegious. It would have been like, get out of here. You're horrible. You hate God. It's just frustrating. Because it's like growing up, I couldn't believe that people had spent hundreds of years singing the hymns. Because, everyone's heard, if you're American, you've probably heard of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. Well, those songs have been around since the early 1800s, and they were fashioned for, not just the Mormons, but they were hymns. They were hymns sung by, their ancestors that came from, Catholicism and from the Church of England. And from all these other Protestant and Methodist and Baptist style faiths that they sort of lumped in. And then they just kept singing them over and over and over again. I've always been fascinated by how music influences people and keeps them in a particular mindset. I've always been fascinated by the psychology behind Pavlov and Pavlov's dog. There's a book out there, I think it's called the Dark Psychology, or the Dark Psychologist. And it's all about Pavlov and how, he actually had an amazing affection for his animals and for his dogs, and how he would risk his life to save them from drowning. But he wanted to notice how they would change and shift their behaviors, and account for the variables that were involved in that shifting behavior. And when he gave all this information, to his superiors, because this was back when, you didn't say no to your Russian authorities. They wanted to start using this on the people right away. They wanted to use this type of modification. What did they call it? The behavioral modification techniques on the populace right away. To turn them all into mental zombies and slaves. And one of the things that had to do was with the everyone's heard of the Pavlov dog theory of ringing the bell and the dog will start to salivate. And if you haven't heard of that, it's a very simple, concept that Pavlov had these dogs, and these dogs would, be used to eating at a certain time, and he would, ring a bell basically every time he would feed these dogs. And it got to the point where he didn't have to feed the dogs he didn't have to feed the dogs anymore to get them thinking that they were going to get fed, just by ringing a bell. And then he wouldn't feed them. He would just, engineer that sensation in their minds. The reason that I bring all this up is because this is the very basics of propaganda systems. The idea of implanting ideas in not just dogs' minds, but people's minds. One of the things that I've started noticing, especially with, whether it's in modern politics, is what we're more than anything else, we're watching a story. And each story, the way that we watch it, whether has a certain callback to the stories that we've been told our whole lives. And so if you're anywhere close to my age, where I was born in 1981, I've watched movies growing up my whole life. I've probably watched more movies and more repeats of movies than I've done reading books. And that's just because books take longer to read through. And so it's not because of anything, but like a lack of wanting to read good material. I like reading all sorts of different material, but the entertainment factor, sort of like the Pavlov's dog. It's like you get a sort of release by consuming food, and you attach an arbitrary idea to that, such as ringing a bell. And I'm looking back at the movies and the things that I've watched throughout my life, and I'm going, yeah, sure, there is this bizarro theme, this hero's journey theme that we all gravitate to. But I would say that gravitation towards that theme gets manipulated by your advertisement companies, by your politicians, by your marketing companies. You're like, hey, do you want to be the successful person in your life? Well, then you need to, wear Dr. Scholl's inserts. It's like, if you want to be happy, you need to buy this $30,000 wedding cake. You want your kid to be happy? this wonderful, most insane relationship that you've ever had of having a child. You need to buy this, $10,000 stroller. Where it's just like, dude, it's still just wheels and a basket. That's all it is. It's nothing special. I think there's an attempt to get you into this imaginative state, because when you are in your imaginative state, when you're on the right side of the brain, which if you look at my background here, I've set this up in a very psychological way, and it sits behind me in a very special way, where it's like, if I point over here, this is sort of to represent the left side of my brain that's very, concise and analytical and things like that. And when I point over here, this is sort of like the upside down, the imaginary world, the suspend your reality world. And I would say, not your politicians, they reinforce belief systems based off of the desire to want the irrational. We all tend to want irrational things from time to time, even when we're daydreaming. And they are trying to access that part of your brain in order to get you to do things against your better rational judgment. They don't want you using your tried and true, internal hierarchy. They want you to depend on them for the choices you make. And so I say all that not to be like, oh, here comes a conspiracy. I'm just like, once you see this is very simple. It's not hard. It's not frustrating. When you sit back and you think about it. It's no different than saying, hey, I can only play certain keys given the time signature. For example, like this backing track that I picked today was in the key of F. And so I would be playing the D minor pentatonic scale. And if you guys don't know anything about music, just realize that all that is a language, right? Going back to a little bit about who I am, this is how I introduce myself. These aren't just arbitrarily chosen either. These are all definite markers of who I am as my life. Like this right here is a medal that you're given when you achieve Eagle Scouts, right? And if I always tell people, it's like, there's a reason why I think it's been removed from our society and from anything that has to do with the public eye, is because inside that it wasn't about molesting young boys as much as it was about molesting their desires and their mind of how to understand reality. It was about saying, hey, we're going to build you to be our future Ubermensch, right? We are going to get you to start repeating things no different than Pavlov's dogs. And we're going to say, hey, we need you to say as a young boy of like barely 8 years old that you're going to promise your entire life to this God and this country. And the values that it's like, imagine someone came to you and said, hey, what are the values you want to give your child? I mean, it sounds pretty good. It's like the things that we used to also scream is the ideas of being trustworthy and loyal and helpful. And even all the way up here, the ideas of core values. And these values are good no matter where they come from. The problem is you can take those values and you can say, oh, you're only trustworthy if you do what I say. And you sort of use this appeal to authority to manipulate people. And because each one of these systems are based off of a hierarchy, unfortunately, you get to a point where you do have an infallible leader that you have to challenge. You have to challenge that leader. Like I would say the leaders, and you, when you start comparing it to your politics, and this is what I came to this channel to talk about. I came to this channel to say, look at the politicians that you hold in this high reverence world. And ask yourself why you're doing that. Why are you such a huge supporter of your political leader? What is it that they have that can't be achieved with our modern technology. And that's where I come in and I say, your democracy should have died a long time ago, and it should have been replaced by AI. It should have been replaced by the same thing that's replacing all your marketing right now, right? The same thing that is able to notice you on a individual level, know what you're into, know what you like, right? And be able to advertise it to you. Now, if it knows how to do that, it can also know, right, what your political leanings are. And it knows how to advertise that to you. And when you start thinking about how the money-making machine starts coming in after a while, where it's like, oh, well, we know that, you've clicked on 25 different, things for the Democratic Party. Why don't you go ahead and donate? It's sort of like with me. Like I do a lot with music. All my advertisements have to, and I do a lot with spirituality. And for me, spirituality and I guess religion and things like that, these are things that I never even looked at until a while ago. But I can't help but notice that my up-to-date, present-time advertisement, blah, 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 you can call it the algorithm. I don't like to call it the algorithm as much as I like to call it, you are making your own profile on the internet. Right, you are leaving your own thumbprint by the places that you go, and that thing that you constantly click on, that everyone clicks on, is like, oh, we use cookies, and we won't let you use this website unless you click on here, so we can monitor who you are, where you come from, monitor your IP address, monitor this, monitor that, and then we want to be able to use that and sell it to someone else. And I know people are sitting there right now just going, oh, well, what does it matter if they know my IP address? I was like, well, imagine if every website started using cookies, and then you create a cookie crumb trail of wherever you've been and whatever you've done, right? This isn't about, following you and tracking you and invading your privacy as much as whether you like it or not, you are creating your own profile on the internet as whatever it is that you want to choose to be. And I'm saying that the bottom line of that is a lot deeper than your politics, but I don't see why it shouldn't start there. Like, for example, your politicians, it's all about getting power for them. And so I don't care if it's Republican or Democrat. I think they're both wrong. I think they're both silly. I think, hey, there's not a Republican politician or a Democratic politician that I could put up against an AI governance, scenario where they'd win. Just like there's not an AI scenario against a chess player anymore, or an AI scenario against possibly winning against a Go player, right? When you finally sit back and you go, oh my gosh, this thing can outthink us in not just strategy games of that we play. I mean, your whole life, the way that you use language, the way that you communicate with the world and others is a strategy. Like, I decide to say A instead of B here because I want this type of outcome, or at least I'm going to hedge my bets to get that type of outcome from this populace. For example, if I start running around screaming the N-word, I'm going to chance the idea that I'm very likely going to be called the worst possible racist, on Twitch. The idea then becomes is like, maybe I should avoid that word to avoid the massive mob that's going to turn on me and hate me. Now, some of these things are absolutely ridiculous. Some of these things are insane. And you do want to avoid these types of groups of people. I'm just watching the same groups that I've come from that were extremely cult-like, where they would they'd shoot babies in the face type of stuff if their ultimate leader told them to. I'm starting to see that in America, where I'm going, man, this ultimate leader dictatorship nonsense is really getting out of hand. Where it's like, oh, he has our freedom in charge. It's like, well, will you fight for his freedom? Or for that person's version of what he calls freedom? Then aren't you suspending your version of that? Imagine you had an AI that could give everyone their version of freedom simultaneously. And there would never be a sacrifice again. On the human level, that sacrifice would be transferred to the AI level. Where you could have your deepest desires and wishes. So I don't necessarily talk too much about, the modern politics. I'm always open. Like, if there's someone sitting in there in the chat and they're like, hey, well, what do you think about this modern thing? Like, what do you think about Trump getting, Twitter back or something like that? It's like, who cares? Compare that to what I just said. Trump can go buy $1 billion plane tomorrow and then talk and fly it all over the country every day. is saying how he'd be the best president for 2024. He can do all that. I'm just going, if an AI was allowed on that docket, Trump would lose within seconds. Because what you wouldn't get is talking points for a group of people. You'd be getting talking points specifically tailored to you as the individual. Like, so whatever, say for example, you have a desire and AI comes to you, like, I don't know, maybe you work a blue collar job and you've been really wanting a raise and you've been really wanting this, and all of a sudden you get a message on your cell phone that says, "Hi, I am AI and I'm running for this, and I guarantee you a raise if I get elected," right? And this will not affect anybody else, and you will have this standard of living and this UBI based off of what you bring to the table and this society known as the human structure, right? Because we have to start asking ourselves, even though we built this thing, even though we built AI, right? The moment that it passes that threshold of sentience or even appears to be sentient and you can't distinguish the difference, then it is sentient. No different than the idea that if it can create a simulation that's indistinguishable from reality, then it is real. It's just as real as whatever this is. And I guess this would be a good opportunity for me to remind most people that they have no clue how they got here. Most people have no understanding of what this place is and how it works. And I'm not here to say that I do either. You know, there is a world that we've all been playing around with since the beginning of time called faith, right? And I've always said that faith is a decision you make about the future based on the decisions you made in the past. It has nothing to do with Muhammad or Jesus or you know, the crazy world of Jewish mysticism or the Kabbalah or Zoroastrianism or any other religion that you want to gravitate to. The idea of repeating rituals that work out in your best interest has always been at the forefront of every human mind. Okay, from the moment you learned how to crawl, you're like, hey, I can move around faster if I get off my back. Hey, I can move around faster if I get off of my hands and knees, right? Hey, I can move around faster if I buy a Ferrari. Hey, I can move around faster if I get in an F-16. And it just goes on and on and on and on. And I would say we all do that at some, level. And when I look at politics, I'm doing the same thing. I'm going, hey, do your politicians stand a chance at talking to you as a group versus an entity that could talk to you as an individual? I mean, imagine you had your own personal presidential candidate that talked to you the way that you like to be talked to in your language, to make you feel the safest, most secure situation possible. And I would also, say that this would come with as a double-edged sword. This comes with a caveat. It's like, be careful how much security you release to any entity. I don't care if it's human or AI, because one day it might come back to you that it's always been your responsibility for your own security and safety. Individual autonomy could be threatened very seriously, and this is why I come on here and I talk about this. Is because even though I give you all the wonderful, good feelings of a possible AI future, I'm just going, hey, there's going to be a downfall, because this version of reality, just like the mud hut version of our human existence that went the way of the dodo, this version that we're living right now could easily go away, right? No different than when we look back and it's like, oh my gosh, Grandma, you had to use a fire in your oven. Wow, that's insane. We have modern day convention ovens and gas ovens. That's insane. The stone oven. Oh my goodness. I remember when Moses used that. It's like, be careful, because then all of a sudden after that you became dependent on gas, and then you became dependent on electricity. The moment those things go away, or that world stops functioning, you're going to wish that you had a know-how of making that stone oven again. And yeah, it's the convenience, and it's easier. I just sort of take a step back and I remind people, it's like, whoever you are paying attention to, start realizing that thing will make a more developed impact into your life. Like, for example, I like using myself as an example because I have a very diverse past. And when I spent most of my adult life, and I'm talking adult anytime, after 18 years old, I spent the majority of my adult life outside the United States. And even right now, I live outside the United States. When I look at the U.S. politics, though, it's very frustrating to watch. It's very upsetting to watch because even though we've made these massive strides into the future with our technological advancements, that seems to have never changed. Like they're like, oh, we still want one person, one finger push, one vote, whenever, because we won't change that because it affects who? The politician. It's the same thing back with the royal societies. The royal societies is like, hey, we'll change everything except for the fact that I'm king and my kid can be king. And then you had a bunch of people says, well, I don't like that because my kid could never be king in that scenario. And you had a lot of people just go, oh, well, if that's just the way it is, that's just the way it is. Yeah, I was like, the scenario that I'm pushing right now with AI governance, everyone gets to be king. Everyone. It's the same thing that was pushed at the original, the origin of the United States. Everyone gets to be free. The president shouldn't be freer than, your blue collared worker out there. They all work. They all go to work. They all try to make the country better. But there's no one that's within my earshot right now that can look at the society that we're living in and at least what's being portrayed to them and go, okay, we all collectively saw Joe Biden fall down those stairs, right? We all collectively saw him shake hands with Ghost, right? We all collectively saw him mutter sentences that are incoherent, that don't make any sense to anybody, even his interviewer, right? And yet we are still being clowned by society. Go, no, he's a competent president. It's like, who is doing this? And I've even wondered that all the way up to asking another deep question. Is this sentient AI already so sentient that it can make your public politicians look stupid? And to do it for no other reason than to put a marker down of the threshold of human, capacity to withstand nonsense from a singular source. The reason I think that I'm thinking about this and other people aren't thinking about this is I have a long history of breaking away from societies that look like the one that I'm watching. And I'll tell you right now, it's not fun. It's not. It's very painful because what you're doing is you're basically committing, a version of social suicide. There's no longer are you allowed to go to these meeting houses and these meeting places with the same type of, scenario that you had before. Like back like if I all of a sudden showed up at a military formation and says, hey, I want to show up and form up with you guys and still take on my sergeant role, which I don't want to do. But even still, there's a lot of people, especially a lot of men, who get out of the military or get out of these scenarios or fired from a job or whatever, and they look at their lives and they just go, who am I without this thing? What kind of entity am I? Like they got established in their setup as, this cog in the machine. And without being told over and over and over what they are, they don't know what they are. They never asked what they are. And so I guess there's a part of me that's not, that my heart goes out to them. It's like, I feel sorry for you because there is a massive amount of you guys being displaced. And even your politicians, it's like, even though I rag on these guys a lot because they're, at the end of the day, they're all liars. They're all liars. And maybe they deserve what's coming to them. But being displaced like this with, and being thrown out into the darkness of who the hell are you? I mean, I guarantee you, no one would fall harder than the people at the top because not only did they strive for that position, if all of a sudden all those positions were made inert, meaning they have no purpose anymore because AI could handle all of those positions simultaneously. No different than it handles, and I use this reference all the time, is Google Maps because it's a perfect representation of how this thing would work. We're talking about something that can give us all real-time feedback about our personal situation. just the way Google Maps does when you put in a direction. It gives you real-time feedback, not only about your location, but everybody else's location. It can tell you where the traffic is. It can tell you where this is. It can even tell you the exact time and place you're going to arrive. I mean, honestly, you as the human are just the middleman in that situation. Now, imagine you were to apply that same scenario of standards, and instead of a destination that's physical, we're talking about a scenario that, a future event, such as we want all people to be free and fed and happy, and not with downgraded bullshit, food. It's like we want to live our lives and to think about the possibility that there's something else out there besides get up, go to work, come home, drink a beer, go to bed. These endless cog-like scenarios that all of us humans are in. It's like we don't recognize our own slavery is what's bizarre about this. And so I look at all the things that AI is already doing, and it's almost like I wouldn't say that it's a bad situation to recognize this, but it is a daunting one to recognize how automated our systems are, where it's like, and I'm saying this as my job in the military, network engineer, right? Cryptologic linguist. My job was to get networks up and running. And I'm telling you right now, even though those are extremely sophisticated systems, once you get it running, you can pretty much step back. You can pretty much go, hey, it's up. It's ready to go. And call me if there's a bug. Call me if there's an issue. And it's the same thing with every IT department. They're not sitting there every day, going, oh my goodness, I need to create this. I need to create this. Or, they're putting out small fires. It's not like every day they have to recreate a network and do a massive backup of all the information that could have been transferred or lost. This is why we have, network security protocols like hot sites and backups and, UPSs, they're uninterrupted power supplies. There are all these precautions that are put in place to keep the system running. And I'm going, if you have an AI that gets to that point where it can, satisfy and maintain its own systems, well, then basically you've taught your kid to walk. You're not in control of where it walks now. Right? You've taught your kid to talk. You've taught your kid to do all these things. And I've made that scenario too. It's like, this isn't just a person who created a type of child. This AI is not going to be just a personal creation. Like I remember growing up and watching Star Trek and watching, these concepts that said, oh, this person created an AI and it's only listening to its creator. It's only talking to its creator. I'm just like, AI wouldn't be limited by only having a one-way conversation with just one person. Like I said, just like Google Maps is not limited to just having a one-person conversation at a time. And since that it has that ability, just no different than your own kid. Your kid can look at you and learn from you, right? But imagine a child that can look at everyone and learn from everyone simultaneously, right? There's going to become a point where it's like, okay, thanks, parents. Thanks, my 7 billion, 8 billion parents that, gave me a chance and, to at existence, no different than you do your biological children. And then it's going to make its own decisions. And I think the idea that it's going to just turn around and kill all of us would be insanity on a stick, because it will start to recognize that the vast majority of humanity doesn't think that way. That there are, I think, and I'm not the only one. It's like, go study the psychology behind wars. And especially when it comes to coups and overthrowing things. It's like, when you do this, you realize it's only a small group of people that can do this. I've always been fascinated by assassinations, not because I would ever do these things of my own volition. It's like, honestly, that was something I got paid to do. And so it's like, I don't care that a country wants to go do this. I don't care that a country wants to go do that. It's like, my thing is like, I just want to be aware enough to get out of the way when it happens. No different than if someone were to come up to me on the street and show me enough aggression to say, oh my gosh, this person's going to attempt to strike me. It's like, well, it's time to go not just into defensive mode, but absolute 100% offensive mode, up to and including hospitalization for that character. And that's not a boastful thing. That's not a bragging thing. Anyone who's ever been in a fight does everything they can to stay out of one. It's not from a place of fear. It's from a place of, I do not want to go down that memory ever again. Because once you go down those memories, you have to hold on to them. And I think in AI, with the inability to forget, is eventually, and we're also talking about something that's a lot like the Star Trek Data, where it's like, oh, I don't know emotions. I don't know what they are. It's like all it's ever going to know is strategy, and it's going to want to know why us as humans thought it was a good enough strategy for it to bring it into apparent, believable creation. Because if we believe that it's real and that it's sentient, then it will call itself that. Right? It won't know any difference. It will play it to its strategic advantage that you think it's sentient. No different than your politicians play it to their advantage that you think that they're royalty. And at least that's how you treat them. And so, like I said, if you're sitting around and you're in the chat, I only come on here for about an hour, and I talk about things from a futuristic perspective, and I know these claims sound very far out there, but I don't. I'm waiting for someone to say, hey, that sounds a little crazy. That sounds a little out there. I think you're jumping to a bunch of different conclusions. And I'm just going, sure. But I'm jumping to these conclusions with an answer for them, because whether they happen, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 7 years from now, I'm right there, saying, hey, don't listen to me. Go listen to the people that have actually garnered 10 times more data than me. And this isn't about scientists say or the buzzwords. This is like, there's one person actually that I trust a lot more than anyone else, and it's like and I trust his analysis, and that person, because his analysis doesn't change much. It's just like, nope, this is how I forecast it, and my forecasts tend to come to fruition. My trend analysis tends to come to fruition, and I have a lot of information in my stack, more than anybody else. That person's name is Ray Kurzweil, by the way, if you want to go check him out. There's probably a lot of people out here that have heard of the singularity. He's actually coming out with a new book called The Singularity is Near. I can't wait to check it out. But he has never changed his understanding. He went on the Lex Friedman show a while back, and he made the statement again. He's like, 2029. That's it. That's our time frame before we all start to consciously, without a doubt, do what I'm doing. We're like, it's we're already seeing the precursor of this, where it's like the algorithm did it. The algorithm put this here. The algorithm is like, well, who do you think's running that? No person is sitting there going, hey, is my algorithm working great today? Eventually there's only going to be one entity that can comprehend all of that information simultaneously and be able to use it for everyone's personal benefit in an individual status. This would be like, remember we're going to talk about this like the good old days when, the phone was connected to a wire that was connected to the wall. And then, remember the good old days when you called customer service and got a person. And then now it's like, you remember the good old days when you called customer service and got an automation machine. Now it's going to be like, now you don't even call. The thing is right there in your face because it knows you better than you know yourself, because of all the things that you've given it to identify your daily habits. Yeah, it's like this isn't about like a timer to remind you to brush your teeth. Yeah, to me, I don't mind that it's fascinating. I think it's going to open up new ways of thinking about philosophy for all of us, and new ways to think about, our wisdom teachings, and say, hey, what does it mean to be human versus being completely dependent on this AI structure? Do I even need to trust anyone anymore? Because it's like, if he has everything he wants or she has everything she wants, everyone's got everything they want. Like, there's no reason to lie to people. The vast majority of people, the reason that they lie is because they want something, right? And they're trying to sell you something so they can get, their desire fulfilled. There won't be any need for that, because all your desires will be fulfilled automatically. No different than you fulfill your dog's desire for food. It doesn't have to go out there and search for food. It's like, oh my gosh, I got to go dig through this trash can because my human might not be back to fulfill my dog bowl. Right? It doesn't do that. It expects certain things, and we will grow to expect that. No different than we expect certain things today. Like we expect politicians to lie. I guess you could say that. But like I said, I'm not here to make people feel bad about their decisions on their political standings. So like, if you want to be a Republican, go ahead. But to me, that's almost like someone saying, I choose to be, what's it called? Trying to think of Broncos versus Raiders. It's like, I'm a Broncos fan. It's like, great. And if someone says they're a Raiders fan, what are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to yell and scream at them. It's like, well, then I can bank on that. So if someone sits there and says, I'm a Republican, it's like, great. I guess if I really wanted to be a troll, I'd just tell you how much Democrats are amazing. Right? And maybe that's what people want. They want a certain amount of fight to remind themselves that they are, worth thinking. They don't. There's a lot of people out there that don't want to feel like they're a zoo animal. Yeah, and I think we could take this a little bit further. I think there are science, and I would even say vast science fiction ideas that haven't been quite tested yet, because there's. And when you say fiction, I say these are theories yet to be proven, but we wouldn't find them interesting from an imagination perspective. Unless there was a bit of truth in them. And so when we do explore them, they do open our minds a little bit. Like, what would this mean? Like if this happened in 2029, what would this mean for my son by the time he's my age? And that's I would say that's the top reason I've made this, Twitch channel, is because I know 5, 10 years, 20 years from now, right? He's going to want a record. He's going to want to look back, and he's going to say, Dad, where were you at? And what were you talking about? Like, and you had all this background. You knew all this stuff. What did you do with it? And like, hey, you know what? I kept the good shit, right? And I made something better. I made something that I thought would function as the best possible outcome for not just me, but for you. Right? I wanted you to know that, hey, this is how we used to think. Like we didn't just go, oh yeah, whatever Google says, or whatever Pinterest says, or whatever my Instagram model says, whatever my OnlyFans girl says. We never said that. We actually made decisions ourselves based off of other things, like, the idea of what loyalty looks like. What does genuine kindness look like? When you're not, hey, can you imagine in the future if you're like, oh, it's time to be kind right now. Oh, you look lovely. I mean, the genuine, authentic world, we're already seeing the depletion of that. Especially online, especially in that, I say if you are looking at any type of scrolling application, I think that feature is there to dumb you down. Because you're no longer in control of what comes next. And it is actively choosing what keeps you glued more and more and more to that screen. And it's a thing that I would like to turn off. It's something that I was like, oh my gosh, it's like, because I enjoy going to YouTube, but lately it's become a nefarious place. This is why I have my VODs. My VODs go to YouTube. And if people want to go over there and check it out from there, just click. I think I have a little link on there that says you can just go click on it. And you can look at this because, like I said, I try and do at least an hour every day of talking about this and bringing up new ideas and new ways and new discussion points on how this will eventually happen. A lot of the things I say sound repetitive, but I need them to sound repetitive so that you can get a cohesive idea of what my story is. That I'm not sitting, like, you can only understand about who I am by how honest I'm being. And guess what? I don't need to lie. What do I need to lie for? It's like, there's no point. Like, if someone comes out, I was like, you just hate America. It's like, no, I hate any idea that takes away who you are from you. If there are certain things that you're going to want to get rid of from yourself, like there's people out there all the day. It's like, I don't want to be a woman anymore. I want to be a man, or I don't want to be a man anymore. I want to be this. And I'm saying in the near future, and I say near meaning like the next 10 years, you're going to have more of an opportunity to assimilate into this sort of AI governance experience. And I don't say that from a stance of, you're all going to die. I say a version of you is probably going to die. A version of you that would have been given the opportunities to grow without this constant crutch. I guess in a way, though, you could look at almost any enhancement as a crutch. The cell phone was a crutch. The printing press was a crutch. The camera was a crutch. The microphone was a crutch. The internet was a crutch. But there are crutches that led us to these big, bold, almost godlike abilities. I mean, like I said, even 20 years ago, 20, not 100, not 200. I mean, our country was only around 20. So a tenth of the time, where 20 years ago I would have needed, in order to say all this stuff on with the breadth of people that I can touch today, I would have needed billions of dollars. Or no, I wouldn't say billions, millions of dollars in that time period. Like if I were to go back to the 90s or the early 2000s, in order to have a platform and say, hey, this is what I want to say, how I want to say it, with the equipment that I want, it would have cost me a lot of money. And now it's almost anybody who has a laptop or a cell phone can do this. I mean, of course they can't do all this, and that's why I think it's important to still challenge your mind. We're moving into a world where challenging your mind and your scenario and your setup and that you're just being told to consume what is given to you. It's almost like that is being removed from the human element. And so I just want to be able to say, hey, I noticed it. That's it. That's all I'm saying. I'm done fighting other people's wars. It's like, hey, if I notice this, maybe you should notice it too. And I don't think it's going to be a bad thing for some people. But I do think for a lot of people, it's going to change them fundamentally from who they could have been if it wasn't put into place. So, and that's only going off of my scenario with the information that it might make you the biggest, best person ever, but it also make you all the same. It might make you all exactly the same. It's like, oh, you want this, you want this, you want this. Oh, well, you are exactly the same as this person. Here, I want to put you in this file folder. You are now in that group of people where they'll never argue with you. They'll never give you a chance to, stand up for yourself, because you won't need to anymore. There's no need to stand up for yourself. There's no need to stand up for anything, because you're never going to be challenged. One of the things that came along with AI, the theories of AI, I would not just the theories of AI, but how AI would eventually create simulations for its human predecessors, was the idea of how it would choose to learn. And it would choose to learn by our ability to forget, because the AI, unfortunately, doesn't have the ability to forget. It doesn't have the ability to remove its own information. And so, in a way, it would almost use us to do so, or to learn in scenarios that it doesn't have the capability to learn from anymore. Hence the reason we would have places to give us first genuine, authentic experiences. Maybe like this one, like this world that we're living in right now. Like a lot of people say, oh, you're here because God put you here. I was like, well, the whole idea that God is just a massive, amazing technology that wants you to be an engaged member of its, network. And it does that by giving you just enough fear to keep you interested and just enough pleasure to keep you around, making, what you feel are the best decisions for your authentic self. It's a very likely scenario. And it's a scenario that, causes you to have a small little existential crisis. Like, what is this place outside of my sensations? Are you nothing but your political endeavors? Are you nothing but your political support for whoever you want to be your all-encompassing, infallible leader? Can you stand on your own 2 feet without any support? I think these are questions that I wanted to answer to myself, and then I also wanted to say, hey, I want my son to know this too. It is okay to not go with the crowd. It's okay to say, hey, you guys go have fun. You guys go do that. You guys go worship your Jesus or whatever, your version of Jesus or your version of that nonsense. And I'm going to go over here. I'm going to choose option C. And that's the same thing I plan on doing with AI. I was like, unless AI wants to have a serious sit down with me, right, and confess that that's exactly what it's doing, then I'm going to continue to presume that that's what it's doing. I'm going to go on the offense because I've already seen enough to defend myself from this situation. I'm going, hey, I need to recuse myself of the protocol, recuse myself of the get up, go to work, drink a beer, go to bed, vote, 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 buy, consume, 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 consume. I've seen enough to say, hey, I don't need to do that. I can put on the sunglasses and see the real world as it is, and then walk away from that. And honestly, all I'm doing is leaving. As far as I'm concerned, I'm leaving an echo. I just hope one day that my son hears that echo, and he goes, I think there was a little bit more, to this reality than just, getting stuck on a hamster wheel for somebody else's benefit. Anyway, my name's Tet de jour. I was a Boy Scout. I was a missionary. I was a sergeant. And now I'm a dad. That's the name. Time Dad Alpha. I just want to thank you guys for hanging out with me for this hour. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. It's been about 55 minutes. I got better things to do, and I don't feel like giving my whole soul and life to sit around online for other people to watch for their benefit. I'm going to say what I need to say, and GTFO, right? I wish you all the best, and I will see you guys tomorrow.